Second Timothy chapter 4, and we're ready to move on to verse 9. But I do want to say one more thing about the end of verse 8, where Paul talks about, his whole verse is, now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. Don't forget the long game. Don't forget that we got a destination. It's easy to forget that. It is for me. I get frustrated with how life is in the here and now. And I think that's just normal. But if I lose sight of the fact that the here and now, this isn't all there is, it gets ugly. And that last phrase, also to all who have longed for his appearing. Now, I talked about that already, and it's worth remembering that he is returning. He will appear. It will take, I think it's going to take all the world by surprise. I think it'll even take us as Christians by surprise. We know it's coming, we just don't know when. And so when it happens, we'll be one of those, oh yeah, type things. Well, and it'll be, that's just not even enough to describe how it's going to be when he returns. There's another sense that I long for his appearing. I long for his appearing in me. I long for his likeness to be more completely, more thoroughly formed in me, so that when people encounter me, they encounter him. That'll never happen accidentally. It will happen supernaturally, but not accidentally. It's the result of God's grace at work in me as I trust him to shape me to become more and more like Jesus. Well, okay. And then Paul shifts gears. It's almost as though, a break in thought. And in verse 9 he says, do your best to come to me quickly. So I think Paul is saying, hey, please come here to the prison. Our understanding, basic understanding, is this was his final imprisonment in Rome. Where was Timothy at the time? Well, he was in Ephesus. Where's Ephesus? It's in modern-day Turkey. This would have been no small journey to undertake from Ephesus to Rome. Paul doesn't seem to have a problem saying, hey, come quick, do your best to come quickly. And then he says, here's why. For Demas, because he loved this world, has deserted me and has gone to Thessalonica. Now, we have heard about Demas and Demas shows up 3 times in the New Testament. Once is in Colossians 4:14, where Paul includes him in a greeting. Our dear friend Luke the doctor and Demas send greetings. To be grouped in there with Luke, the good doctor, the author of Acts and the Gospel of Luke, that's pretty tall cotton. And then in Philemon, verse 24, and he's closing out and he's sending greetings, and he offers this greeting from Mark, Aristarchus, Demas, and Luke, my fellow workers. Now, what in the world happened so that now Demas, because he loved the world, deserted Paul? We don't know. But we do know by the time Paul was at the closing of his life, he writes this letter, which if it's not the last letter he wrote, it would be among the very last. And something has happened. I don't necessarily think it's like he and Paul had a falling out. I think he loved the world. He loved this world. When I'm tempted to throw some rocks at Demas and go, what's wrong with you? And then I look in the mirror and realize, I'm afraid I love this world too. When we lose track of our real citizenship, well, when we lose track of what Paul wrote in that sentence before this, when we no longer long for the Lord's appearing, pardon me, something will fill that void. And the most likely thing will be this world. Its system, its convenience, its comfort. I don't think is Paul talking about Demas running off and joining a Satan worshiping cult. I don't know. I don't think it's Paul writing about Demas that he sold out to a specific entity, and that his sin thrust him out of relationship with Paul. That's not. What I see here is Demas had done what I'm afraid, well, not afraid, but I'm embarrassed to say I have often done. I've become enamored with this world. For me, I don't know whether this is true for you, so I'm not accusing anybody, but just a moment of self-disclosure that may touch on your life as well. For me, when I love this world, it shows up mainly in my love of comfort, my love of convenience, in me feeling good about pursuing what I want. There's a whole array of things in that, like I am ashamed to admit that I like money. I like being able to do stuff with it. And it'd be one thing if I was like George Mueller. If you're not familiar with George Mueller, do yourself a favor and do a little bit of an internet search, and you'll discover he was a wildly unique individual. Anyway, the point of his life is he saw the need for caring for and educating orphans, and he determined that he would meet that need through the grace of God by praying for God's provision and never asking anyone for financial support. It's been decades ago that I read his biography and I just marveled at story after story of God's provision. I would love to be that kind of man of faith without having to do what it takes to become that man of faith. It takes all kinds of risk. And one of my difficulties, I don't know about you, but one of my difficulties is I don't like taking risks unless I've got a really, really sure thing. Well, now, on the one hand, is there a surer thing than heaven? Is there anything more sure than the grace of Christ? Is there anything more sure than His love and His power extended and working in our lives? No. But there is often something more immediate. Because, see, here's what my life, my experience in my life tells me. God provides. But He sometimes doesn't provide. I can even say He often doesn't provide in the way and in the timing that I feel I need it, which basically comes down to how I want it. I'm more like Demas than I want to be. And one of the things about loving this world is that it will determine your behaviors, your actions. And I mean, simple thing, you see it right here, is because he loved this world, he deserted Paul and went to Thessalonica, which is in Greece. That's not across the globe from Rome, where Paul was imprisoned, but something had enticed Demas to leave his post and go to Thessalonica. Now, Thessalonica was an attractive city of fair significance in the ancient world. Today it's called Thessaloniki, but we don't know. How many times do I have to say that? We really don't know what was the tipping point for Demas to make that move. Don't know. But I do know this much. Paul is expressing disappointment that Demas left him. He doesn't say Demas has left the faith. Just he deserted Paul. He hadn't deserted God that we know of. We do realize, though, that his work with his ministry to Paul, it ended when he left for Thessalonica. And that wasn't, if it was just the one guy, then okay. But he goes on to say, Crescens has gone to Galatia and Titus to Dalmatia. That's the same Titus that Paul wrote a letter to. The same Titus that I tend to put in the category with Timothy, young minister. We don't know, Paul doesn't identify their leaving as desertion. He just says they left. My sense is, for sure, with Titus went because of the call of a ministry of some kind. But these three guys had left him. His support, three of his primary individuals for support were gone. It'd be pretty easy. It would have been very easy for a guy like me to be on the pity pot and just whine and complain. I don't really see the complaint. I don't really see him. I don't see this as a whine. I think he's saying, hey, Timothy, do your best. Come to me as quickly as you can, because these three are no longer here. And I think they were three guys that he had respect and affection for. So, I don't know where I'm going with all that. I do know this much. I don't want to be Demas. You don't either. How do we keep that from happening? Well, I think that is worthy of us coming back to next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.